Hello, today I am going to share a story that will help us understand the concept of Maya. So let's begin. Once Lord Vishnu and Narad, in their adventures in and out of eternity, had just left the cottage of a family who had fed and sheltered them for a night. In every direction, glistening desert dunes stretched out to the horizon. A more miserable family than this I have never met. Narada asked Vishnu, why are human beings so blind and incapable of seeing themselves? In that home, each one of them is suffering for no reason at all. The grandmother, who has lost her eyesight after years of weeping for her dead son, could easily have avoided it. Why do humans mourn at death when they have their entire lives to prepare for it? Tears are not going to bring him back to life. Besides, she has five others. And what a miserable bunch they are. The wives don't get along, the husbands are forever fighting over their father's property, and even though they have plenty, they don't think they have enough. I have entered all their thoughts and found not one, not even the children, to be happy. How can people be so foolish? Compassion, Narad, compassion, Vishnu said. This is the burden of being human, and none may escape it. I have escaped it, and I am not saying this out of pride. Narad said quickly, priding himself on his ability to catch thoughts that might sound arrogant to others. Yes, Narad was well versed in the sacred imperative of humility. Certainly I grew jealous when I believed your love for other devotees exceeded your love for me. But it won't happen again. I have always cultivated the wisdom that you have taught me. Do your best and don't get attached to the fruits of your action. I stay anchored in detachment because I am conscious of my own inner processes. I have learned how to stay above emotions that are dead ends. My devotion to you, my meditations and music have all taught me to witness the drama of myself and of life around me. I am the bird that watches. You know that story, or shall I tell you? It often happens that when Narad spent long periods of time with Vishnu, the veils of familiarity obscured Vishnu's godhood from him and deluded him into thinking Vishnu was merely a close companion and a very good friend. Tell me, Narad, my teller of tales, Vishnu said, looking into Narada's eyes with amusement. As Narada stared back into Vishnu's eyes, he felt himself drawn to them like a bee to a flower, his entire being vibrating to the kind of ecstasy in which words cease and the earth stands still upon its axis. All around them the desert shimmered in the moonlight, and the heat rising in undulating waves above the sand. So still it became that even Narada's heart stopped beating while the two of them communicated through a thick plasma of silence. Vishnu looked away, broke the spell and sat down on a boulder, one foot on top of the other knee. He kneeled forward and repeated his request. Tell me the story of the bird. Birds, Narada said, shaking himself and trying to regain his reason, which always offered him a sense of comfort and safety. There are two birds on the tree of life. Are you sure, Narada? I thought there was only one. No, two, definitely two. One of them sits at the very top of the tree and witnesses the goings on around him. Now this reminds me of another story, but I will wait to tell you that one till I have finished this one. Stories, Vishnu, are like snarled threads, each connected with the other, and it's very tempting to want to tell them all at once. But time, linear, progressive, maddening time, won't let me. Are you sure time is linear, Narad? Just yesterday, Vishnu said, picking up a thin sliver of petrified wood from the sand. This desert was a thick forest. So thick no light could shine through on the forest floor. Yesterday? It was eons ago, surely. No, yesterday. And the day before, it was an ocean with roaring waters, Vishnu said, unearthing a spiral shell with its toe. Time is undoubtedly linear. Narada repeated, a little bit annoyed with Vishnu for all his interruptions. Words follow one after another in a line. Words, sentences, paragraphs, pages, sense, all unfold in time. Like a seed planted in the earth takes time to grow into itself. So since time is linear, I will draw out just one single strand, not risk losing my audience. The bird that watches Vishnu is the yogi. All his senses drawn in, and therefore immovable by desire. The other one is the bhogi, the sensual experiencer, taster of life, one who enjoys the fruits of the tree, eating and nesting, laying eggs, hatching her young, and so on. I, Vishnu, I am the bird that watches and witnesses. Are you certain? Vishnu asked. You surprise me, Vishnu. Have I ever married? Have I ever fallen in love? No, none of that is for me. Love seduces humans with its magic and illusion. That is why Narad is celibate. For humans, love is the root of delusion and attachment. Narad needs none of it. Narad loves his youth. He said, Don't be too certain, Narad. Love is the sweetest dream. Even gods succumb to love. Even I, who love to sleep and dream, have surrendered to it many times. Once when I went to rescue Earth, when she sank beneath the primal sea, she wrapped her arms around me helplessly and looked into my eyes with that look which cannot be described. I was ravished and enchanted by her. I spent thousands of years as a pig, loving and being attached to all my joys and sufferings. Once in yet another incarnation as Ram, I loved Sita dearly and was very distraught when Ram abducted her. And then of course you know all my exploits as Krishna. Love, Narad, is the magic of Maya. I will tell you more. I made love to Maya as well as and begot time. The mention of many reincarnations reminded Narad of Vishnu's godhood, and he wondered for a moment if he had taken too many liberties with his friend. What is this Maya, Lord? It is illusion, Narad. This three-dimensional world looks solid and convincing, but it isn't really there. It is as insubstantial as a dream. See? Asked Vishnu, passing his hand through Narad as if the musician was made of air. Luminous molecules, dancing particles swarmed out of and into him. But that's because we are immortals. Narad protested. No, this pertains to everyone. Everything. I can't quite grasp the idea of Maya. Could you put it in a comprehensible formula for me, Lord Vishnu? Maya is the illusion by which the one supreme force appears as the web. She is the great weaver who sits in the center of her web, weaving it and ensnaring her victims in its golden threads. It is the great force that is the very glue of life, Narad. Very few, 1 in a trillion perhaps, escape the phantasms of Maya. Could you be little more explicit, please? I am thirsty, Narad. Here, fetch me some water in this container from that river. Narad turned around and sure enough, right there in the desert was a wide and vast flowing river that wasn't there the last time he had looked about it. He wondered if Maya meant magic. Here, fetch the water from the middle of the river. It is sweetest, clearest and coolest there. Narad took the container and leaving his lute, leaning on the dune where Vishnu sat, walked to the river, marveling at how an entire river had appeared to quench Vishnu's thirst. Narad stepped into the swiftly moving river. Its current lashing its feet and ankles. Remembering Vishnu's injunction to fetch the water from the middle of the river, he waded in further, till the waters reached his waist. Narad thought he heard Vishnu say something, but the rapids were so loud that Narad couldn't make out the words. By the time he reached the middle, Narad was sucked downward by an eddy so powerful that he lost all control. He spun rapidly round and round in tremulous circles, swirling and whirling till all Narad had known before was dislodged and washed out of his skull. He forgot who he was, what was he doing there, where he had come from, or where he was going. Even his body melted away in the waters, and just as microscopic tadpole-like creature remained. Narada's being sensed a radiant corona before him and swarmed towards it furiously, propelled by a purpose he couldn't comprehend. He knew only that his life depended on it, and he had to get to it to survive. His tiny head pierced through the transparent, numerous membrane of the halo entered it and swam towards its center. A translucent cloud of water surrounded him. All was still and quiet. Tight. Floating freely in a warm, fluid-filling cavity, his being fell into a sweet slumber. In this sleep he grew, like a fetus in a womb, developing all his sense organs, his spines, heart, and other organs. From this sleep, Narad was awakened by pulsing contractions. His head rotated, slithered downwards through a canal, engaged in a bony structure and gradually emerged on a soft sands amidst the breaking of waters. He came to the consciousness on the banks of the river. Someone was crying, and upon opening his eyes, he saw that it was himself. He rolled over and stood on all fours, cleared the fluid from his nose and mouth, and got unsteadily to his feet. Who am I? Where am I? What am I doing here in this desert? Where did I come from? He asked himself a succession of questions with no answers. No trace of memory remained. The only thing he knew was that he was very hungry. He looked around and saw just a short distance away a town with a dome-like wooden houses and mud huts. People jostled about in the streets, children played, and cows and bulls roamed on the outskirts, in the desert, grazing on the meager shrubbery. None of it looked familiar. It was all new and very strange. He was compelled to move towards one of the wooden houses in the road. As he neared it, he heard sounds of kneeling and wailing inside. The door opened and a woman cried out, "Bimla, Devdutt is here." He thought to himself, So that's my name, Devdutt? A young woman in a white sari came to the door. He had never seen her before, yet when he looked into her eyes, he felt he had known her for all time. A memory stirred within him of others, familiar eyes like lotuses in the deep dark pools which made him long to submerge in them. And as the woman gazed back, her eyes loved filling, alluring, the desert all around him sprang alive in an instant. Trees grew and blossomed with the fragrant flowers. A soft, cool breeze sprang up, caressing his limbs, and birds began to sing sweetly. The desert vanished and earth became paradise. Bimla took him by the hand and brought him inside, where a shrouded body lay stretched upon the ground. Devdutt knew without words that this body was Devdutt knew without words that this was the body of her father. He also knew that he was destined to take his place as the head of the family. Bimla set him down on the floor and fed him from the funeral feast. Devdutt ate as if he had never, ever eaten before. Everything tasted new and delicious. The buds of his tongue sang with pleasure at all these types of dishes and delicacies. Sour and salty, bitter and sweet all melded together to form the exquisite sensation. And now and then Devdutt and Bimla looked into each other's eyes and feasted on the sight of each other. The days followed in a quick succession after the funeral. Devdutt asked Bimla to marry him. She consented and her mother gave her the consent to as well. The marriage ceremony was over. Devdutt began to enjoy connubial bliss. The buds of all his senses bloomed. He took pleasure in the sight of his wife moving about the hut, the feel and touch of her at night. He delighted in the musky odors of her skin, the aromas from the kitchen, the incense from the altars, the fragrance of the flowers, the taste of the wine, the sound of her voice, the roar of the river's water, the wind, the babble and laughter around him, and the songs of street musicians resounded in the labyrinths of his ear. It was the sound of music above all else that stirred him and connected him to someone, something that he couldn't name. Devdutt took over the family fields and labored hard to make them yield the crops. Soon the conception of a child was announced, filling him with a small waves of joy as he moved through his days, working and eating and touching his wife's belly in love and gratitude. When he looked at Bimla's eyes now, it wasn't just the two of them, and they were joined together with the filaments of love, but three. Not just three, the coming of this child made them feel their connection with the entire created world, its miracles and mysteries. They were bound to it all by the threads of light. Even as the child grew in her mother's womb, tentacles of attachment grew from Devdutt's heart and wrapped themselves around her. He walked about full of gratitude and heightened sense of grace, and though he still didn't know who he was, where he came from, it didn't matter. Life was on course. Life was on course. Everything was it thought to be perfect and unimaginably sweet. During Bimla's pregnancy, the price of grain went up and Devdutt made a great deal of money with which he bought bigger house for his growing family. He got bulls and cows, hired many servants and farm hands, and started a new business selling yogurt, milk, cheese, and ghee. The child arrived, a lovely girl, whom they named Chandini. And when she was old enough to open her eyes, Devdutt saw that she too had the very familiar eyes, the eyes that reminded him of something or someone he couldn't name or remember. Chandini's eyes too enchanted and matched her. Chandini's eyes too enchanted and matched him. Devdutt soon became the richest man in town. All his family material wants were satisfied. He spent a great deal of time making, spending, counting and saving his money. At the same time, he sought prestige and power and became the head of the Panchayat, the local political body. He was honored and admired, respected and envied. More children came, a son, Guru Devdutt, another daughter, Roshni, and then another daughter, Ujala. The cords of his heart wrapped all around of them tightly. He got involved in the uprising and education. As time steamed away, the marriages as well. Grandchildren came, all with the same eyes that reminded him of something he couldn't name. And though indeed everyone in the village had the same eyes, Devdutt saw only the eyes of his family. He still loved his wife dearly. Passion turned into companionship, then friendship. Together they delighted in their grandchildren, united in their concern for each other and the well-being of the family fabric, held together with the fibers of attachment. Through the recurring seasons, Devdutt's life settled into the usual circles of ups and downs within the wheel of time. He hoped for a good monsoon and despaired when it didn't come in time. He was elated when he could negotiate a good sale of his products in the next town, and depressed when some unpredictable disease devastated his stock. He worried when any family members fell sick, and rejoiced when all were healthy and happy. But one day, the course of Devdutt's life changed suddenly and dramatically. Heavy monsoons made the river flood. Each day his family watched the river swell in the heavy deluge. They hoped the deluge will abate and despair it that it won't. As the days passed, the very foundations of the house were undermined by the water. One night, it groaned and shook like a cardboard box. Devdutt and Guru Devdutt managed to get everyone out of the house in time, but the house itself broke apart, its fragments floating away like paperboards in the stream. With a grandchild perched on each shoulder and his hand clutching his wife's hand, Devdutt made his way through the waters, slipping and sliding on the mud beneath his feet. In the distance he saw Chandni and Roshni twirling in a whirlpool. He cried out to them, extending an arm, but they were gone. The movement made one grandchild slip off his shoulder and fall. Devdutt watched helplessly as she swirled in the water and disappeared. He wept and cried aloud hopelessly, adding his own flood of tears to the rain. Further downstream he saw his son and daughter, Guru Devdutt and Ujala too, washed away like logs in the current. The despair in his heart weakened his aged body, and he stumbled, dropping his other grandchild into the river and loosening his grip on his wife's hand. His heart desolate with grief, he saw all his members of his family drift away from him before he too lost his footing and fell into a turbid flow, wheeling and revolving in the flood. I don't want to die, he kept repeating. I want to live and reunite with my family. He felt himself rushing to a dark tunnel and knew that this was the end, this was death. Despair gripped his heart tightly as it tumbled headlong in the waves. Narad, he heard a voice say just as he was beginning to lose consciousness. Narad, don't get the water from the middle. Hearing the voice, Devdutt found himself on solid ground. He opened his eyes and saw he was standing on a third of the way into a river, facing the middle. He saw houses drift by and bodies he recognized as the bodies of people he loved. He gasped in shock when he recognized one of the bodies as his own. Turning towards the bank, he saw the desert shimmering in the sunlight and a figure, wholly familiar, entirely new, sitting upon a boulder looking at him. Where you are is deep enough, Vishnu said. Narad shook himself like a dog shakes himself after being submerged in water, and all the drops flew off him, a shower of droplets, each a little bubble of an entire lifetime. He looked down at his hand and saw that he held a container full of water. Still reeling from his life and death, still uncertain about who he was and what had happened, he walked towards the figure on the boulder. Now he remembered what it was that he couldn't remember or name. Vishnu. All the eyes that he, Narada's Devdutt, had loved in his lifetime that has lasted a split second has been Vishnu's. He it was who had divided and multiplied himself into the men. Now they have all returned to their origin in Vishnu's body. Maya was all Vishnu's Leela, a play, a dance in the illusionary duration whose causal cycles and lyrics seemed endless. Lyrics seemed endless and were no more than tiny blips in eternity. Vishnu held out his hand for the container, took it, and smiling over the rim, took a nice long draught. Then he lowered it and said, Maya is the long sleep and a forgetting, Narad. Blessed are the people who are awake. Thank you.